Good evening, everybody, from NASASpaceflight.com. I am your host tonight, Lon Seidman, and I've got some great hosts along with me this evening as we await the launch of Starlink 6-10. I'm the new guy here, so go easy on me this evening, but we're going to have a lot of fun. Joining me is Sawyer Rosenstein, my expert this evening. How are you, Sawyer?
Ooh, I like that. The expert. Thank you
You
for
are the
the kind
expert.
words. Yeah, I'll take it. I'm doing great. Any day there's a rocket on the pad, knowing that it will hopefully leave the pad, at least, is a great day.
That is the hope. And we have some folks out in the field who can give us some idea of the weather, which I think is our primary concern this evening. Let's begin with Max Evans. How are you tonight? I think he's muted. We'll go to Julia Bergeron. You're also in the field this evening. How are things looking out there?
Well, good evening. Well, I am in Titusville tonight at Kirk Point Park, and well, it's definitely not raining anymore. The mosquitoes are coming out, and I'm looking up, and we still have some cloud cover, but nothing that's going to prevent launch because I can see Launch Complex 40 across the lagoon from me.
That's a good sign that if you can see it, we will hopefully see a launch this evening. And from where you're at, how do these night launches look? Because you're not all that close, but certainly within view.
I am only actually 12 miles away, so this was a place where a lot of people would come to watch shuttle and even earlier the Apollo. So a lot of the pictures you'd see of the crowds out in town, that was along these coasts. So 12 miles, that's still a great view, everyone.
Awesome. Well, we look forward to hopefully seeing some great views this evening and get the bug spray out. And Sawyer, so this booster is pretty well seasoned at this point, isn't it?
Oh, yes. We're not just talking salt and pepper here. We're talking quite a few flights now. We are going on for our 13th flight of this particular booster, previously supporting, here we go, CRS-22, Crew 3, Turksat 5B, Crew 4, CRS-25, Eutelsat Hotbird 13G, mPower A, PSN Satria, and 4 additional Starlink missions. She's quite a busy one, including a scheduled landing tonight downrange on the drone ship, a shortfall of gravitas.
So we'll be seeing a nice launch and a landing. And these Starlink missions really work these Falcon 9s, don't they?
I mean, yeah, it's also a great way as they continue to push some of these boosters into the kind of crazy amounts of reusability. 13th flight, 15th, 16th flights. I mean, it's a absolutely perfect way to test it out, basically. And I just realized I never actually mentioned the booster number. This is B1067.
And I guess they put like a dash number after it for its number of flights, right? So this would be 1067-13. Is that the right
It
designation?
is dash 13. We are hoping it earns the dash 14 after landing.
That's right. Well, we'll be looking out for that. Now, on board is a bunch of Starlink V2 minis. So these are the version 2 Starlink satellites. And you know what struck me, Sawyer, is that these are bigger, so you can't fit as many on the rocket. And I guess they're calling them mini because the Falcon or the Starship is going to carry the big ones.
That's been the plan, is that Starship V2 would fly on the on Starship, but they had to actually make some changes. They saw it was running a bit behind, so they went to the FCC and was like, "Hey, is it all right if we launch other satellites into that range, but they're a little bit smaller in the meantime, so they can fit inside the Falcon fairing?" And they got the approval for that, and so that's why we now have almost 5,000 Starlink satellites in orbit, and all of the launches from now on are the V2 minis, as the last V1.5 launch finished.
I guess I was looking through some stuff on a few different sources, and it looks like hundreds of these have been deorbited already. Some of the older ones.
Yeah, either deorbited or will eventually deorbit shortly as a way to. Again, the nice thing about these relatively lower orbit ones is if something's wrong, it will burn up pretty quickly in the atmosphere. The big thing is you don't want any space junk in there because there's already so many satellites up there. There's already concerns about potential collisions between satellites, spacecraft, even the International Space Station. So to be able to have a place that you can either move it into a graveyard orbit where it will stay, have it low enough that it'll deorbit quickly, or have an engine on board that can help quickly deorbit a malfunctioning satellite, that's always the goal.
It is. We want to keep those things either working or on or burned up in the atmosphere so they don't interrupt anything. And it's amazing when you look at these charts of all the satellites in orbit, how many Starlinks there are already. So it's quite the constellation. Hey, sorry, should we take a couple of super chats before we go too much further here?
Go for it.
All right, so I'm going to take Musical Wolves here, who's made 2 super chats of $2 each. The first question is, has this booster landed on both Cape drone ships? I don't know if I have a quick answer to that one. Do you?
I believe the answer is yes. Short follow gravitas and just read the instructions, especially with 13 launches under their belts. And I would, from my understanding, they did both drone ships.
Yeah, I'm actually looking through it. Looks like that is the case, and certainly the odds are in favor of that. And then Musical Wolves. Wow, he's been giving us a lot of super chats here. There's some mosquitoes out there. Do you think the Falcon 9 will clear the mosquitoes after liftoff?
I think that's a question for Julia out in the field there.
What do you think, Julia?
Well, I don't think they're going to help Max or I, in all honesty. Falcon 9 might clear the mosquitoes from the immediate area of the pad, but definitely not across the lagoon for me, sadly.
Sadly, got to keep that bug spray going there, unfortunately. I want to thank Paul McFadden, who gifted some memberships, 5 Red Team memberships. So thank you very much for the gift on that. And we have another one here. It's an off-topic question from FFC T-Hawk for $5. Wants to know, can we talk or speculate about the last static fire at McGregor? Amazing.
That was a very unique one. For those who haven't seen, check the NASA Spaceflight Twitter. It was a very unique angle to see the exhaust come out of that engine. So open that up in another tab if you have a minute and take a look at it. It was very cool to watch.
That was pretty neat. And one more for Musical Wolves at $2. How many mini launches till the Starship full Starlink? I guess we got to get a successful Starship orbit first, right?
Well, yeah, there's that too, and I should make sure that I say NSF for where you can get that on Twitter. But yeah, as of now, all launches are the minis until Starship is fully up and running. And again, right now we haven't seen any of the vehicles with the PEZ dispenser, so to speak, the method that would release the full-size V2s, make it onto a ship yet. We've seen a few built, but a lot of them have been welded up and haven't flown yet. So I think it's still a little ways out. So that's why we have the crazy cadence at the Cape. And boy, that is a lot of alliteration.
It sure is. So it looks like we're just under a half an hour until liftoff. And what's going on right now at the pad? That it looks like they're doing some fueling now already, right?
Yeah. Haven't heard the official word the fueling has started, but we don't need the official word because of what we can see visually, and that is all of the bottom of the booster starting to get frosty. That frost build mimics basically the fuel lines, the fuel tank, how full each of them are with these super cooled propellants. It's the RP1, or Rocket Propellant 1, which is a refined form of kerosene. And the oxidizer is liquid oxygen, or loxygen as we call it here, all at super cool temperatures. And so you've got super cooled insides with super humid Florida outsides. And so you get to see that kind of steaminess in the frost.
And it is pretty super humid out there tonight, Julia, isn't it?
That it is. I made the mistake of turning off my AC when it was raining because I had the windows open, and then I kind of dozed off and forgot, and now I regret it, and my AC is working that much harder for that humidity.
And Julie, is this one of the nights where, so I remember this from the Artemis launch, where it's so humid that your lenses fog up even if they're at the same temperature of everything else outside? Is this one of those nights?
Wet, moist, pick one of those words
Pick one of them.
and you'd be correct. Yes.
Because I remember Artemis at 2 o'clock in the morning, everything was fine until we hit just about a minute or two before launch, and my lenses were continually fogged up. So there you go.
Same,
Uh,
same.
It was awful, and my tripod legs were sweating. It was insane, but it was cold. It was weird. So, Musical Wolves, another $2 super chat. Sawyer has my permission for infinite puns.
Whoa! I think that's going to need to
Whoa.
go through some back channel approval, but
Hey,
and Max is already saying denied.
none of that. And then we have from Skull Kid Ray for the Coffee Rocket Fuel Fund. Still not sure what you're fueled on, so covering all bases, plus some more for the Pun Fund. And he gave 15, looks like 15 pounds or $19.08. So thank you very much for the support to this evening for that. And this evening, I usually stop drinking coffee, but if we go later on, perhaps I might. There was going to be a number of launch opportunities this evening, and now we're kind of pushing up against the end of the window, aren't we, Sawyer?
Yeah, the window tonight technically goes until midnight, but there are certain times that SpaceX likes to target. They typically target 3 or 4 different T0s or liftoff times in the window. There's a good chance that some of it has to do with orbital mechanics in terms of A, the best time to get the satellites into the orbit they want, and B, the other significant thing, kind of going back to what we were just talking about, is to make sure that when they launch, there's not directly satellites overhead that you run the risk of crashing into. So there are cutouts specifically designed so that you don't launch a satellite into another satellite.
Yeah, that would be a very bad thing. And
Yeah, probably.
there's quite a number of them now to dodge out there. Hey, here's a question, a good one from Retro Fan 42. I'm a retro fan too. He's wondering, how many flights of a booster do you think SpaceX will eventually say that's enough?
Ooh, that's a good question. I mean, right now, I know we have boosters that have hit 16 flights, and those, as we mentioned, are primarily being used for Starlink launches at the moment. If I had to put money on it, I think eventually they would probably want to get up to 25 or 30. Right now, I think their main goal is 20. Get those couple of boosters that are already up there at 16 launches, push them, see if they can make it to 20. Again, all these primarily launching Starlink, so if something does go wrong, it's your own payload as opposed to a different paying customer.
Right.
So I think 20 near term, 30 long term.
And when we talk about the booster, obviously there's the booster, the tanks inside. There's 9 engines. Does everything stay with the booster, or is it possible that a booster might get a new engine every once in a while?
Oh, it's very possible that they will swap out the engines because obviously after that many flights, you're going to have to take a look at everything and go, wait a minute, this seems a little off. Let's either refurbish it, repair it if we can, or given the launch cadence, if it's quicker and easier, just say, hey, we've got a spare Merlin here. Let's pop it in. They don't say specifically if they do that, how many times they've done that, if a particular mission has new engines. They don't put that outright, but it would pretty much have to be the case. That's over the course of 16 flights, something swapped.
Right, exactly. And also we're dealing with essentially, kerosene here. So a lot of the soot on the rocket is just from the dirt that comes out of that fuel as it burns, right? It's got to have some impact on some of the plumbing too, I would imagine.
Yeah, again, as we talk about, the RP1 is kerosene. Kerosene is carbon based. Carbon based burnt up tends to create this sort of soot out of it, and the way the rocket's flying, it flies directly into said soot, leading to not only the sootiness on the outside of the booster, but if you think about it, the engines are also flying through it too. So I'm sure there's some pipes or tubes or things that may get a little clogged up that need to either be cleared out or swapped out.
What's funny is, covering the space program here. It's amazing how much plumbing is involved in rocket science. It's rocket plumbing. It's important. So a couple more questions and super chats, and Max is telling us in the chat that the best event is coming up
in 1 minute. Exactly.
All right, should we wait for that?
If there's a quick question, we can take it.
All right. So here's a good one from Musical Wolves. Again, thank you again for a $2 super chat. How many launches till the cost decreases? When do they make their money back?
Well, from my understanding, I believe SpaceX has mentioned that launching Starlinks is profitable for them. So the answer is currently. We've heard from reports that SpaceX is one of the few profit-making companies under Elon's belt. But yeah, whether the Starlink network itself is or not yet, I'm not 100% sure. And again, a lot of it's private, so they don't have to tell us all of this.
Right.
But from my understanding, it is, these launches at least are profitable.
All right. So it looks like we're going to be coming up on that big vent in a second.
Yeah. You know what else is profitable?
What's that?
Pun tokens. Oh, no, wait. Sorry. I meant vents. As we come up on the, even though it is the T-minus 20 minute vent, it's technically the T-minus 22 minute 20-ish second vent, depending on the day.
It's not it's somewhat exact, of course, within it's my T-minus 22 minutes on Falcon Heavy, it looks like, from what Alex is telling us in the chat here.
Or sorry, T-minus 20 minutes 20 seconds. I'm thinking of Falcon Heavy. My gosh, I wish this was another Falcon Heavy coming up, but we'll have to wait till Psyche.
All right. And so, have you ever used a Starlink terminal before?
I have actually. It may or may not have been at a launch involving a special launch system going to space, as well as during a Falcon Heavy launch for a certain company with initials NSF, but I don't endorse it. NSF doesn't endorse it. It was just something that we use as a backup in that case, and it has its flaws. I mean, it works most of the time, but it's very obvious when there's a satellite handoff. I'll say that.
Right. Yes, and you can't really rely on it for live streaming just yet, but it can work pretty well. My brother's got it up in northern. My brother's like the perfect customer for them because he's in northern Vermont. He had DSL that was worse than dial-up, and it made a big difference for him. But it's not always. It goes down sometimes just for all the different things that are going on with it. But it's pretty good stuff. All right, looks like we're coming up on that big vent. I see a lot more venting.
I know we keep teasing it. It's like, now we've got this big old anticipation here of this vent. Why are they still talking about this vent? This vent must be super anticipating. Oh, man.
If you're there, it's pretty...
It does. As I say, what Lon is referring to actually is a really good illustration of when it is humid here, you see things looking extra venty.
Like this. Like this T-minus 20 minute vent that is occurring as we speak.
There it is. For the folks at home, I have a very little window here, so it's hard to see it all.
Yeah. Wait, you're close enough? You can see it out your window? Then why aren't you out? Oh, no, you mean a computer window. Anyway, this T-minus 20 minute event is, like we said, it's kind of like clockwork. It gives you an idea of where we are in the countdown timeline. That is currently a vent purge on the TE, or the transporter erector. That's that big metallic structure on the right side of the rocket there that, as mentioned, transports it out to the pad, erects it vertical, and then also helps provide it with fuels, oxidizers, and ground power and other things prior to the actual launch itself. So this is also the indication likely that RP1 load would be complete on the second stage. This will happen for about 4 minutes here, and then at the conclusion, once that vent stops, that is usually the indication that second stage LOX load, or liquid oxygen load, is underway. And we have confirmation that stage 2 RP1 load is complete, both now from the net and the visual with the vent.
It's a good sign that we're making progress here, and the humidity is extreme. Look at all that. That's awesome. All right, we got a bunch more super chats here. Should we keep going?
Sure.
All right, so Bidford, $25 super chat. Good evening, NSF nerds and friends. Who all is staying awake to watch the second launch later? And pun tokens for Sawyer. So there's a back-to-back one tonight, isn't there?
Yeah. Well, also the pun tokens I appreciate here. I see people always offering them to me in chat. Love it. As for the second launch, I'm a night owl. I'll be up anyway. For those wondering, there is a second Starlink launch. I believe that is 7-1 out of Vandenberg Space Force Base, and that is scheduled currently, after a slight delay, for 1:42 a.m. Pacific time.
That is a late one, so we will not be up for that one. But
we also don't
but-
have a camera out there, so it's a little hard. We like to
Right.
broadcast things where we are physically actually there. For example, Max with this camera out at the Cape. But of course, we will have full coverage of it on our social media channels, NSF over on Twitter.
Excellent. So definitely check that out. And I have just had some technical difficulties with my host control panel here. So I don't know if you have it, Sawyer, if you want to toss up a few more questions that we're getting in here as I log back in. Hopefully it'll come back up. Oh, I'm back. I'm back. Sorry.
Hi,
All
back.
right.
I'm Sawyer.
There
I
we
do
go.
just want to give a quick shout out before takeoff of Katie Porter here, who's on an airplane saying hello from Delta Airlines. So the rocket may not be in the air, but hopefully you will be soon. So have a good flight.
Excellent. Safe flying there. We have a $1 super chat from Michael. Thank you very much for your contributions there. And let's see, Echo Deal is $5, and he's stuck in a pun token factory.
Ooh, I can help rescue you, that's for sure.
Well, your puns are very profitable here. Here, I'd rather be flying an WX something or other here.
I'd rather be flying an
X-wing.
X-Wing.
An X-wing, as would I. I would certainly be preferring to pilot an X-wing. Plus 10 pun tokens. Just saw the NSF pick of a booster hot stage ring. Nice work, Jack. It looks like the dome will block the center 3 engines. So are they staging with RVAX? This is big news down in Texas, right?
Yeah, I don't know personally whether it will be the RVAX or the CVAX or combination of both. And again, I think we'll find out a little more once we see the actual second integrated flight test. But yeah.
All right. Michael, $2 super chat. He likes rocks. I like X-wings better than rocks, but each his own.
Well, rocks rock. Come on.
That's right.
And at this point, I do want to point out, by the way, you could see that the venting has just about stopped there. That is, as we mentioned, usually the indication that liquid oxygen loading on the second stage is underway. I should point out that RP1 and liquid oxygen loads have both been underway on the first stage this whole time.
All right, so we're working our way down here. It looks like so far, knock on wood, the weather might be okay, huh?
That's what it sounds like.
Yeah. Now we have basically a window that closes at exactly midnight. So we're not going to be up to 2 a.m. like we were the last time, unless we stay up for the launch in California. But they could still get this off the ground exactly at midnight and still hit the window. Is that right? Or am I wrong
mean,
about
at this point, probably not. Once they start fueling, they are pretty darn committed. So the time it would take to turn things around if something were to go wrong, I think 24 minutes is not enough. So at this point, they're pretty much committed to 11:36. So we shall see if they go tonight, and hopefully they will. If not, they do have another backup window tomorrow.
Are you ready for a tough one here?
Go for it.
Okay, this is a tough one. Nikon's in space. I'm a big Nikon fan. Is there a booster that has landed at several locations, perhaps more than others, i.e. drone ships LZ-1, 2, and Vandy?
Don't remember the number. I know there is one that has landed at, I'll just read the instructions. Of course, I still love you. A shortfall of gravitas. And I think it was actually LZ2, if I recall correctly.
So you've got your trivia down here. You know your stuff. This is great.
I can't remember the booster number. That I do apologize.
It's okay. I think the question has been sufficiently answered there. I'm sure some in the chat will have some other suggestions too, or some other answers. Eric Huff with a $200 super chat. Just want to thank you all for your hard work. Thank you very much. You're covering the history of the future of mankind, even the simple little Starlink launches. It's all moving us forward to infinity and beyond. And I got to tell you, as you all know, I'm the new guy here. I am so now that I've seen the inside of how NSF works here, I am incredibly amazed and blown away by the dedication. I knew there was dedication before, but see it all in action here. Max and Julia are out there getting eaten by mosquitoes. This was supposed to go off hours ago. They're still out there, and everyone here is so dedicated to bringing this to all of you. And I'm honored to be a part of this because it's just something that I'm very passionate about. I know all of you are on the team here as well. So, but thank you very much, Eric. And sorry, you've been doing this certainly much longer than I have. This is like my third night here. There's a lot that goes into this, isn't there?
There's a whole team going on behind the scenes, out in the field, getting these cameras up and running, keeping them up and running, getting you all of the videos, the live streams, the launches. We do this because we love it. This isn't this isn't a job. I don't consider this a job. I consider this fun because I'm so glad that we get to convey all these amazing things to you. And the fact that you're there to join us and chat with us just makes it that much better. We have a whole community now of people that love space. And it's only because of the help from people like you, Eric, that we can keep going and, again, turn this into a passion project that we share with the world here.
Great. No, it's such an important thing too, because one of the things that I think the world needs to see is more coverage of space, and that's why even these little Starlink launches, they're important because it's just every little bit contributes to moving mankind forward, which is a positive thing, I think, in this day and age. So there we go. So here's one. I think Chris B. Rath incoming. Somebody wants to know here, 13th Andy with a $5 super chat. When will the NSF logo be updated to remove the orbiter? I don't know. I kind of like the orbiter, but
I can tell you the answer is never. The reason for that is to continue to mark our heritage. For those who know NASA spaceflight from back in the early days when we went more as NASA spaceflight as opposed to NSF, the whole goal was during the shuttle program. We were trying to bring people the absolute best coverage possible with the amazing pictures, the L2 forums, everything going on with the shuttle program at the time. So it's a nod to our heritage that's how we started, and that's what keeps us going now. So yeah, never.
And guess what? If you want new stuff, you can buy things in the store that are new artwork, right? We have new prints. Sawyer. Is that right?
We do at shop.nasaspaceflight.com. Also, very, very smooth transition there. This is one of the newest prints that we have in here of the Milky Way core over the beach in Boca Chica. A lot of our metal prints involve rockets. This is one of the rare few that's sort of astrophotography based. It is an absolutely stunning shot, and I love it. But if you do prefer more of the rocket shots, we have plenty of those as well, including Max's amazing shot here from a recent Falcon 9 launch. That was, I was so proud. I got a remote shot of engines, and then Max posted this one, and it blows mine out of the water. But yes, all of these amazing metal prints are available at shop.nasaspaceflight.com.
They look amazing even on the screen, so I can't even imagine how good these must look up on a wall. I may pick up a few of these, or this is one of those things where like I'll drop the link into my wife's email and hope that something shows up around the holiday time. Right? It's almost here, folks. Gotta start shopping. So it's important for the space lover in your life to get some of that going there. Now, our friends on the YouTube chat can't see this, but everybody's talking about my voice. It's really the microphone. My voice does not sound like what you're hearing. It's the mic is just so good.
That's what they all say.
That's what they all say, right? Exactly.
I do want to point out there's something here that we haven't discussed as we get much closer to launch. About under 10 minutes now. We haven't actually talked about where this thing is going in terms of trajectory.
Oh, yeah. Where is it going? To space, I hope.
Well, yeah, we all hope that. But this one will be going on a southeasterly trajectory once it leaves the Cape. And as we mentioned, the drone ship, shortfall of gravitas, will be about 640 kilometers downrange. And the recovery ship Doug will be out there as well, attempting to recover the fairings. That boat is positioned about 670 kilometers downrange. So, again, this is a great launch for anyone who has clear skies along the southeasternly part of Florida into the Bahamas and down that way. You should get a pretty good view with clear skies.
Now, we talked in the last stream about getting that camera at the Bahamas. Who's going to be assigned to that task?
There's going to be a fight for it, I think.
Yeah, I think there probably will be. And one of the things we haven't also talked about is that they recover the fairings here, and they've had all sorts of different strategies in which to recover these fairings, including having a big net on a boat. It looks like they've kind of just gone to plucking them out of the ocean at this point. Is there something more to it to be able to get those quickly out of the water?
Well, I mean, this is actually a great question, I think, for Julia, who does a lot with the boats.
Julia.
So for fairing recovery, well, what's cool about these fairings is they actually basically parachute down. Then the recovery ship, usually it's either Bob or Doug. Right now, I do believe it is Doug out there. Will kind of chase after them, and then they use their crane to just hook right up to them and hoist them up onto deck. So we went from that idea of a bouncy house, or maybe doing like Mr. Steven, remember that?
Right. Yeah.
Catching it in a net, right?
Right.
Turned out that was hard. So we stopped doing that because we actually lost more fairings than just doing something like turning it into a boat and letting it float a little bit. Salt water does not hurt it if you rinse that salt water off quickly. So here we are, and we achieved what, 10 reuses, Sawyer? On that
I think we had an
11.
11 at one point. Yeah, a 10 and an 11.
Yep, and I think that was just the last launch we had with Booster 1069. So
yes,
pretty
it was very
neat.
nice.
Is really neat. And it's funny that you would think the simplest thing would be to pluck it out of the water, and that's where they ended up after all that other experimentation. So it's quite a amazing amount of engineering that goes into this stuff.
I do miss Miss Tree and Miss Chief, which was the giant nets that they were originally going to use to catch them.
I loved watching some of the videos of that. It was amazing seeing how close they got. I guess they had a few catches too, didn't they?
A few, yeah.
There was a couple catches, yeah.
Yep. Some better than others.
But it's all fun and games until one of them crashes into the ship, and you know.
And yeah. You've got a lot of super chats coming in, so let me keep going on some of these. Because looks like
let's power through some of those here.
Let's see if we can do it here. So, because once you get me going, that's it. Kyle Trick here, $9.99. His dad, Gene, brother Nate, and himself are watching from Cape Coral. So shout out to the NSF folks. Great. Hope you have a great launch tonight. It's always fun to watch them at night. Lights up the sky there. Crazy House Media, $2, likes turtles. So do I. In fact, I
like turtles.
You can see them all over the Kennedy Space Center, can't you? I encountered one.
You can. Also getting confirmation that Stage 1 RP1 load is complete. So that is the rocket propellant 1. The only thing left then to finish on Stage 1 will be the liquid oxygen.
Excellent. We are getting there.
You know what, Lon?
Yes. You're a turtle.
Turtles are something. Turtles are something that can actually make your spacecraft stop wherever it's going if it is earthbound and transporting to the pad. So,
interesting.
Turtles.
I could see that being an issue. What kind of turtles would stop would it be one of the larger sea turtles or even the smaller ones?
Well, it would actually be the land tortoises more so than the turtles, but we've got a lot of wildlife out there. Hogs, turtles, bobcats, all of those things can make your journey to the pad take just a little bit longer.
Gators, yes, pad security as well.
Right. And then the mosquitoes, of course, just are always there.
Yeah, that's fun at the pad.
They're the worst mosquitoes I've ever encountered in my life. They are vicious.
Welcome
mosquitoes.
to Florida.
Yes. Paul McFadden gifted memberships, 5 of them, Red Team memberships, to other folks who are watching this evening. So thank you very much for that. Russ B, 2008, says air with a $2 super chat. Thank you very much for that. And a cat herder cam. I do a lot of cat herding around here. The crowd out here at Rotary Riverside Park is waiting for launch and watching the stream. And they're also contributing some pun tokens for you there.
Thank you. I am pocketing these, that's for sure. Yeah. These I've got so many that I could use it for, but we're so close to launch.
You earn interest on those puns. That's the question.
Yes, and I do want to point out really quickly that we are coming up now in T-minus 4 minutes. Julia, we'll let you go enjoy watching the launch.
And she's going to try to get some video for us, too, which is going to be great.
Yep, and at this moment, we are also expecting the retract here of the TE. So there are little clamps around the top of the fairing halves there. As you can see, they just open up, and then the TE leans back just a couple of degrees. So you'll see it move back a little bit. Thankfully, though, at T-0, it will throw back a lot more and allow the rocket to clear it without any issues with umbilicals and, hitting it.
Right. So looks like we're seeing some more venting up there too. And those are like little
Totally
puffs
normal.
coming out. Totally normal, and that's just to kind of equalize the pressure.
A lot of it, yeah, and also for any fueling lines, a lot of times it's just purging them ahead of liftoff for those. But yeah, those appear to be pressure vents, although the full pressurization of tanks to their full flight pressure typically occurs at T-1 minute.
And yeah, it looks like it's getting pretty humid. It's definitely humid out there. Hey, quick question from Michael here. Which direction does he need to face from Tampa to see it? And can he see it from Tampa?
Southeast. This is one of those that is going southeasterly, as we showed just a short time ago. So that would be the best way to look. Also getting confirmation, stage 1 LOX load is complete. So that is all the propellants and oxidizers inside that first stage there. It's got all of the RP1 and LOX needed for tonight's launch. So expect one more vent coming a bit shortly as they finish clearing out all of the lines.
Right, we're getting close to the T0 mark here, so we're about 2 minutes in.
Yep,
And,
2 minutes.
looks
So, if you'd like, I can give you a quick rundown of what we can expect in the final minute here.
Yeah, let's hear it.
All right. So again, as we get that final vent coming there, at T-1 minute, as mentioned, the tanks will go up to flight pressure. That's also when Falcon 9 will enter startup. That is when the onboard command flight computer takes control of the rocket. Then at 45 seconds, SpaceX launch director should give us a go for launch, hopefully. And then at T-3 seconds, a green flash of a product called TTEB will fire, and that will lead to the ignition of the engines and liftoff at T-0. And we have confirmation stage 2 LOX load is now complete.
Right. What goes on at mission control right now in that last minute? Because right at some point, the computers on board take control and pretty much guide the flight. What are they doing at mission control when that happens?
They're watching every single system on their monitor because sometimes, as we hit the 1 minute mark, sometimes there are things that the computer catches, some that it doesn't. So sometimes it'll be an auto abort triggered if need be, or a manual abort triggered by someone calling it out loud on the net. We don't want to hear that, though, as Falcon 9 is now officially in startup. The onboard computer has control.
All right, we're getting into the 30-second mark here, and we are go for launch.
We have that go from the launch director. As we are now 30 seconds away.
And just before liftoff, it basically holds itself down before it is released. Is that right?
Ramps up to flight pressure. And again, we will not be muting any audio. As soon as the audio hits our cameras, we'll provide it to you in less than 10 seconds now as we come up to 5. 3,
2, 1, and liftoff.
Liftoff, Starlink 6-10, go, internet, satellites go. V2.
Starlink Express. Beautiful night launch.
what a launch this is, and we are now coming up on max Q. That is maximum aerodynamic pressure that pushes down on Falcon 9. Basically, the most stressful part for the rocket physically on this mission.
Some great shots from Julia, too.
Max, I believe, has got our ground
Max.
track. We also have our auto track running.
All right.
And look at that. Again, beautiful view. This is my favorite part where the engines spread out, right?
Is that just due to there just being less atmosphere around the engines to kind of let that happen?
Exactly, yes. As the atmosphere thins out, there's less pushing down to keep the engine plume basically as tight as it is at liftoff, and so you get this beautiful spread where you can basically see all 9 engines. We should now be about 30 seconds away from a couple events that will happen in rapid succession, as I like to call it. In about 15 seconds, we should have MECO, or main engine cutoff. That's when the first stage will shut down, followed by separation of the first and second stages. And then second stage will start up a few seconds after that in what's called SES-1. And then about 25 seconds after that, we should see the fairing deployment that will expose the V2 minis to space. So that should be starting momentarily. There's MECO. Stage set. And there we go. SES-1, ignition of the Merlin vacuum engine. And there goes the stiffener ring.
So tell me about that stiffener ring a little bit, because we see that breaking apart all the time. What does that do?
Again, it is completely normal. Basically, the goal is to kind of keep the shape of the engine bell as it goes up into space, because the shape would be a little different if you were to actually fire it within Earth's atmosphere. So that helps keep the shape that it needs for once it goes into orbit and starts firing. And stand by for payload fairing SIP. And there they go.
They're heading into the ocean.
For recovery, nonetheless, yes.
That's right.
Just going for a quick dip in the Atlantic.
That's right. Pluck it right out of there. And we saw briefly those satellite V2 or the Starlink V2 minis all stacked up there. And when we get to deployment, they just kind of get pushed out, right? And they separate on their own. They do have their own propulsion, but they don't necessarily use that right away, do they?
Correct. I'll address that in just a second. This, I believe, is still our tracking camera, by the way, following the second stage. Absolutely gorgeous. Unfortunately, we don't get that sort of lunar jellyfish tonight, but hey, that's an amazing view anyway.
Yeah.
That is our auto track, yes. And I should say we now have tied another record for those fairing halves. One was flying also for the 11th time and another for the 10th. So that's now 2 fairing halves that have flown 11 times. Anyway, the question one more time. I apologize.
It's okay. So the Starlinks upon deployment, they kind of get pushed out of that second stage, right?
It's kind of like a tension rod. Yeah, they don't really fire up their engines or anything. There's a rod down the middle. It's kind of holding everything in place. And as it releases, the satellites kind of just naturally spread out. There's some great video from the second stage showing how these V2 minis are released. And it's really cool.
I'll have to check that out. You know what's amazing
After
too
the
to me?
stream, of course.
Of course, exactly. You know, I've watched. I can't tell you how many of these I've watched on NSF's YouTube channel, no less. And every moment of every day, it looks different depending on the lighting conditions and where we are in the day-night cycle. This is an incredible engine glow, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it launches like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
I don't know if Adrian would get that reference. Anyway, we should be coming up now, less than a minute away from the first stage entry burn. That is a approximately 20-second burn that will help slow the vehicle down, the first stage at least, to prepare it for entry and landing. And this is where it flies through its own fire to slow itself down, so fighting fire with fire.
That's when the seasoning happens.
Yes. Ooh, delicious booster with seasoning. And you can see the data on the left there. It has passed the apogee and is now decreasing in altitude, but increasing in speed, which that will change, hopefully, momentarily as we prepare for the entry burn. That will be on the left side of your screen there.
And entry burn's obviously important because you don't want to get too much friction from that atmosphere on that first stage as it's coming back down, right?
Right, and you also want to be able to slow yourself down enough that you can use a single engine to do the final landing burn. I love how you see just the fire, the kind of plasma effect, and
Yeah.
just
Watching
the
that speed coming down
and
super
the
fast.
grid fins, the way it highlights the grid fins, which they're not doing much now, but you'll notice on the actual landing itself, you'll see them moving like crazy to help steer the vehicle once it's into the thicker part of the atmosphere, and that looked like a good burn.
Great to me. Now we'll see that speed going back up again, but still we've lost a lot of downward velocity there, so that's certainly going to help guide us back to the ship.
That is true. So it will go down pretty quickly here, and you can see the speed decreasing as well. So we should be coming up very shortly then on that landing burn. For this particular mission, sometimes they switch around. This one, the landing is expected before SECO 1. That's second engine cutoff 1. That would be the second stage that you see burning right there when it ends. So the first stage landing is expected around 8.5 minutes into flight, and SECO is expected about 10 seconds after that.
Usually they're much closer together, aren't they?
They're pretty close together, and again, depending on the mission, the profile, what orbit it's going into, a lot of times will determine, okay, which is going to come first, the landing or SECO.
Right.
Not the chicken or the egg, but landing or SECO.
Landing or SECO, yeah. This is all automated, which is obviously you couldn't have somebody piloting this thing, but it's just amazing how it can just hit that spot without really any human intervention.
It's beyond impressive. Just how pretty much all the automation out there of getting it there, driving the octograbber underneath it to grab onto it for the ride back.
See that. I want to see that octograbber.
Well, there's the landing burn at least. Yep. You'll see those grid fins wiggling. There's the view on the right from the drone ship. Turning itself towards the deck, landing leg deploy. And they've done it again.
They have. They make it look easy. This is the 43rd landing on a shortfall of gravitas and the 217th landing out of 228 attempts. So those attempts that were not successful were learning moments for them, weren't they?
Yeah, I also should point out the last time that they've had one of those was over 143 launches ago, as this was number 143 consecutive successful landing.
Wow. Julie, I heard you talking there for a second.
Oh, I was going to say, Lon, we would all love to see Octograbber in action, but hello, SpaceX, we'd like to see that.
Yes, please.
An Octograbber is that robot that just latches onto the first stage to prevent it from moving around too much on the deck. Is that how that works? We don't really know how it works, right? We've seen it attached, but not the attaching.
Well, yeah, we do. We know how it works in the sense of it is a remote controlled robotic. It's kind of like a little mini tank. It provides the weight that secures the basically effectively secures the booster to the deck just because of the low center of gravity on the booster after the fuel is burned off. So no magnets involved. It is all just weight and center of gravity and a nice smooth ride home, hopefully. So the actual operation of it, we saw it once in port, which was pretty cool, but not as far as actually attaching at sea.
One day we have to have something to look for, and we have.
I do want to point out that we have confirmation of nominal orbital insertion from the flight team, so it is to the exact parking orbit where it needs to be for now. Keeping in mind that it does still have one more second stage burn. That's about 54 minutes into the mission. That is a 3-second burn, and that will be followed by the deploy about 10 minutes after that burn.
I want to give a shout out to our own Max Evans for braving the mosquitoes and getting us some great imagery from down there at the Cape Canaveral and Kennedy Space Center. He heard an alligator roaring after the rocket took off. So the alligator was not happy about that. Disturbed
you
his
blame
slumber.
him? Woke him up at 11:36 at night. He was asleep probably. Had his teddy bear and everything.
That's it. So do we have time for a couple more super chats before we close out?
I think we can run through super chats quickly here.
All right, so let's start off here with Russ B 2008, who gave us a $10 super chat. Thank you very much for that.
The only thing we were missing, by the way, was fire and water. You got
That's
air and
right.
earth there.
Well, there's plenty of water in the air with all that humidity tonight.
Ayo.
Shadow Gunner 66, Team Stubby. We didn't have a Stubby tonight on these Starlink missions, and another pun token for you. You can fill up that jar a little bit more for you. See, we had Michael's question from before. And Shannon Stevens, $4.99 super chat. Thank you, guys. Thank you for your support. Sam C, I did not pay him to give this super chat. First stream in a bit. Lana's the best and DRM free. That's a joke for my channel. So that's right. I am DRM free. You can load me right up there. And Chris Brazan, $10 super chat. Starlink reliability has improved appreciably over the past year with Gen 2 phased array Dishy for a fixed subscription. Is prioritized over roaming, especially in populated areas. Yeah, they changed up their whole pricing structure on some when you're roaming around there. So good stuff. Well, this was a lot of fun, Sawyer. It's always fun doing this with you and Julia and Max and everybody, and really appreciate spending some time with you all tonight.
Oh, it's always a pleasure. I guess we should go through each of our thank yous here.
Yeah, so we have, by the way, I want to just give a shout out here. Let me pull up our list of everybody that contributed this evening to our effort here. So we had Sawyer on my expert co-host here. Patrick Colhoun was our producer this evening, and Max Evans and Julia were in the field tonight. And how did it look for you, Julia, out there? Pretty good?
It looked pretty good until we hit the clouds, but it was beautiful while we could see it. And in all honesty, we didn't start really hearing it until it hit the clouds, and that was a magnificent growl, which is probably what made that gator growl back at Max.
That's probably it.
By the way, do I get a pun token every time someone mispronounces your last name, Patrick? Because I'll take the pun token. We joke. Everyone messes. This is your inauguration as host. It's a rite of passage.
Well, hopefully I was close.
Cahoon.
Cahoon. Got it. All right. Well, next time I'll get it right. Well, I think if there's nothing else for the good of the order, we have an empty pad and lots of tired folks here at NSF. So maybe we'll call it a night. And we're going to leave you now with views of the Space Coast Live and views of the mobile launcher that is rolling out to 39B. So you can watch that happen this evening. There's no Artemis rocket on there, but looks like they're doing some mobile launcher testing this evening too. All right. Great fun stream here, and hope to do it again sometime.